Have you ever wondered if aging comes with a secret list of behaviors that no one ever talks about? I used to believe that growing older meant wisdom, experience, and the deep respect of others. But as I edged closer to my 70s, a different reality began to emerge, one that I never expected. My name is Arthur, and what I'm about to share isn't just my personal journey, it's a revelation of the darker, rarely discussed side of aging. This is the story of the 12 ugly things seniors do as they age, things that society rarely acknowledges. I remember a time not too long ago when I was the epitome of reliability. Friends, family, and colleagues would turn to me for advice, and I was proud to be seen as a pillar of wisdom. Yet, behind the facade of dignified aging, I slowly started noticing habits and behaviors both in myself and in those around me that I had never before associated with being a senior. These were not the graceful rituals of twilight years that everyone expects, but rather a series of actions and attitudes that, if left unaddressed, could quietly undermine our well-being and even our relationships. It began with small signs. I would catch myself in the mirror, noticing a subtle change in my expression, a mix of irritability, cynicism, and sometimes even a stubborn defensiveness. I would laugh at a joke, but it felt hollow, like a reflex rather than genuine amusement. My conversations with friends gradually turned into monologues about how things were different back in the day, often laced with bitterness. At first, I brushed these off as natural changes, attributing them to the inevitable slowing down that comes with age. But over time, it became painfully clear. These behaviors were not just harmless quirks, they were ugly things we seniors do, things that no one prepares you for. I started to observe these behaviors in myself and soon realized that I was not alone. During one of my weekly bridge club meetings, I overheard a conversation between two peers discussing how they had become increasingly isolated from their families. They spoke of their reluctance to engage with modern technology, their refusal to accept help, and a growing sense of entitlement that led to unnecessary conflicts. It hit me hard. Was it possible that the very behaviors we deemed as senior wisdom were, in reality, self-destructive habits masking deeper insecurities? I dove into research, scouring health articles and studies in gerontology, and found that these so-called ugly behaviors have been observed in seniors worldwide. For example, one study revealed that seniors are prone to withdrawing from social interactions as a way to protect themselves from perceived disrespect. Another research paper discussed how some older adults, burdened by the fear of becoming irrelevant, might engage in passive-aggressive behaviors or even stubbornness to cling onto their identity. It was a harsh wake-up call. Reflecting on my own life, I began to recall moments where I had exhibited these behaviors without fully realizing it. There was the time I refused to ask my daughter for help with the simplest tasks at home, despite my failing eyesight and shaky hands. I insisted on doing everything on my own, even when it meant risking my safety. I had also become overly critical of the modern conveniences that younger generations took for granted, dismissing them with a scoff and a wave of my hand. In doing so, I inadvertently distanced myself from my loved ones and closed off avenues for support. These revelations led me to a profound internal struggle. How could I reconcile the image of a dignified, respected senior with the ugly truths I was uncovering about myself? I began to question if these behaviors were an unavoidable byproduct of aging or if they were habits that could be unlearned. The more I pondered, the more I realized that society had conditioned us to accept certain behaviors as normal when we reach a certain age, behaviors that, if left unchecked, could tarnish the very essence of who we are. I remember one chilly autumn evening when I sat alone in my study, the soft glow of a desk lamp illuminating old photographs and journals. I picked up my journal and began writing down my thoughts, trying to untangle the web of emotions that had built up over the years. I wrote about the times when I felt invisible, not because I wasn't cared for, but because I was too stubborn to let anyone in. I confess that sometimes I was so afraid of being a burden that I chose isolation over connection. I acknowledged that I had become a stranger to my own family, a man who once thrived on engagement and lively debates, now retreating into a shell of cynicism and self-imposed solitude. During these moments of introspection, a question kept echoing in my mind. Is this really the legacy we want to leave behind? It wasn't just about my personal habits, it was about a larger cultural narrative that told us aging is synonymous with a decline in character and vitality. But what if that narrative was only partially true? What if we could confront these ugly behaviors head-on, understand their origins, and choose to change? I began to think back to the younger days of my life when I was full of ambition, eager to learn, and open to new ideas. I remembered the times when even a small inconvenience was met with laughter and resilience, not bitterness. Those memories became the catalyst for my decision to embark on a journey of self-improvement, a journey to unmask and ultimately overcome the ugly habits that come with age. It's important for me to emphasize here that my intention isn't to shame any senior or paint a bleak picture of aging. Rather, it's a candid reflection on the human condition. We all have our flaws, and as we grow older, some of these flaws can become more pronounced if we're not mindful. Aging doesn't have to be a descent into negativity, it can be a time of transformation, growth, and rediscovery. But that transformation begins with a brutal, honest look at ourselves. Have you ever caught yourself saying things like, "in my day," or dismissing modern ideas without a second thought? Or perhaps you've noticed a tendency to withdraw from those who care about you, not out of indifference, but from a misguided desire to remain self-reliant? I'd love for you to take a moment right now to reflect on these questions. Your experiences, whether as a senior or in watching your loved ones age, are valuable. Let's start a conversation about these hidden behaviors so that together we can understand and ultimately change them. As I continued my nightly reflections, I also noticed how these behaviors were affecting my overall health. Medical studies have shown that prolonged isolation and negative thinking can lead to a decline in both mental and physical health. For instance, chronic loneliness has been linked to a higher risk of heart disease and depression. Realizing that my actions might be endangering not only my relationships, but my very well-being was a turning point. It forced me to confront the reality that these ugly habits were not a badge of honor, but a silent killer of the quality of life. My journey of self-discovery led me to reconnect with people I had pushed away over the years. I reached out to old friends, tried new hobbies, and even enrolled in a local community class on mindfulness. Each step was a small rebellion against the notion that aging inevitably means giving in to negative behaviors. I began to see that it was possible to embrace the challenges of growing older while still holding onto the positive aspects of life. It was a gradual process, filled with setbacks and moments of doubt, but also punctuated by instances of genuine joy and reconnection. The more I learned about these hidden behaviors, the more I realized how little we talk about them openly. Society glorifies the idea of golden years, where elders are revered and their experience is celebrated. But behind this facade, many seniors struggle with issues that are rarely discussed in public forums. This disconnect between the ideal and the reality is what inspired me to share my story. I believe that by shedding light on these uncomfortable truths, we can create a more honest dialogue about aging, one that recognizes both the beauty and the imperfections of growing older. I also found solace in scientific research. Studies in gerontology have revealed that cognitive decline isn't as inevitable as we once thought. With the right lifestyle changes, mental exercises, and social engagement, many seniors can maintain sharp minds well into their later years. These insights gave me hope and reinforced my belief that change was possible. I wasn't destined to be trapped in a cycle of negativity. I had the power to rewrite my own story. As I wrap up this first part of my journey, I want to leave you with a challenge. Reflect on the behaviors you see around you, or even within yourself. Aging is a complex process, filled with both gains and losses, and acknowledging the ugly parts is the first step toward transforming them into opportunities for growth. The next chapters of my story will dive deeper into the 12 ugly things seniors do, detailing each behavior, exploring its roots, and discussing how it impacts our lives. I'll share more personal anecdotes, insights from research, and, importantly, practical tips on how to address these issues. Before we continue, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever noticed these behaviors in yourself or in someone you love? What are your thoughts on the hidden side of aging? Your experiences and reflections can help create a community where we support each other through the inevitable changes that come with time. Please share your thoughts in the comments below, and if you're finding this story relatable, let's start a dialogue together. In the upcoming part of this series, we'll delve into the first few of these 12 behaviors, unpacking each one in vivid detail. Together, we'll explore why we do these things and what steps we can take to overcome them. I promise you, it's a journey that's as enlightening as it is challenging. Thank you for joining me in this first step of a path that, while difficult, is ultimately about reclaiming the best parts of ourselves. Remember, acknowledging our flaws is not a sign of weakness, but a courageous act of self-awareness. I'm excited to continue this conversation with you and to explore the possibilities of a richer, more fulfilling life as we age. Stay with me, and let's transform these ugly truths into the building blocks of a better future. As I embarked on the journey of self-reflection, I quickly discovered that the ugly behaviors I once dismissed as quirks of old age were far more pervasive than I had imagined. Over time, these habits had seeped into my daily life, clouding my interactions and chipping away at the vitality I once took for granted. In this part of my journey, I'll dive deep into the 12 ugly things seniors often do as they age, behaviors that many of us hide behind a veneer of dignity but rarely discuss openly. 1. Withdrawing from social connections. One of the most glaring issues I observed was a tendency to isolate oneself. It wasn't always dramatic. It often started with small acts, declining invitations, avoiding family gatherings, or simply choosing to stay in rather than engage with friends. I remember the days when my calendar was filled with community events and lively conversations. Gradually, however, I began to retreat into my own world, convinced that I didn't have much to offer anymore. Research in gerontology supports this. Studies have shown that social isolation can increase the risk of depression and even impact physical health, leading to a decline in mobility and cognitive function. I began to wonder, was this withdrawal a self-protective mechanism or a silent cry for help? 2. Constant nostalgia coupled with bitter comparisons. It's common to hear phrases like "in my day" or "things were better back then." While reminiscing about the past can be comforting, I noticed that for many seniors, this nostalgia often morphed into bitter comparisons. I, too, found myself lamenting the loss of better times and critiquing modern lifestyles without considering their merits. This behavior isn't just harmless reminiscing, it can be a barrier to adapting to new ways of living. Studies have linked persistent nostalgia with decreased overall life satisfaction. I began to question whether holding on to the past was truly preserving cherished memories or simply trapping us in a cycle of negativity. 3. A reluctance to embrace technology and change. Technology has reshaped our world, yet many seniors cling stubbornly to outdated methods, refusing to learn or adapt. I vividly recall the frustration on my face when trying to use a smartphone or navigate the internet, a struggle that many of my peers shared. This resistance isn't about disdain, it's often rooted in fear and a sense of inadequacy. However, research consistently shows that staying engaged with technology can improve cognitive function and foster social connections. The irony is that by refusing to embrace these tools, we inadvertently create barriers that isolate us further. If you're still with me, comment below if you've ever felt left behind by technology or even seen someone you care about struggle with it. 4. Denial of physical limitations. As our bodies change, so do our needs. Yet, many seniors, including myself, tend to ignore or downplay these physical limitations. I recall the stubborn pride that prevented me from asking for help, even when a simple task became daunting. This behavior, though fueled by a desire to maintain independence, often leads to accidents and deteriorating health. Medical research warns that denial of physical decline can result in higher risks of falls, chronic pain, and decreased overall well-being. Embracing health and adapting to our evolving bodies isn't a sign of weakness, it's a critical part of aging gracefully. 5. Stubbornness and an overinflated sense of self-reliance. There's a certain pride that comes with decades of independence. However, when that pride morphs into stubbornness, it can become a barrier to growth. I once spent weeks insisting on repairing a broken appliance myself, despite clear evidence that professional help was needed. This obstinacy not only wasted time and energy, but also strained relationships with those who were eager to assist. Research in behavioral psychology suggests that an inflated sense of self-reliance can hinder our ability to adapt and learn new ways of coping with challenges. By clinging to outdated notions of independence, we risk missing out on opportunities to improve our quality of life. 6. Criticizing modern ways without seeking understanding. I found myself increasingly critical of modern practices, whether it was the new music, different dietary habits, or even the way younger generations communicated. It wasn't that I disliked change, I simply felt alienated by trends that I couldn't relate to. However, such criticisms often turned into harsh judgments that isolated me further. Social studies indicate that when seniors adopt a negative stance toward contemporary culture, it can lead to feelings of resentment and disconnection. Instead of rejecting the new outright, there is value in understanding the perspectives that drive these changes, bridging the gap between generations. 7. Neglecting personal grooming and hygiene. One of the most personal and sensitive areas I had to confront was my own decline in self-care. There were days when I would skip a shower or wear the same clothes for far too long, habits that I rationalized as minor inconveniences in the grand scheme of aging. Yet, neglecting personal hygiene not only affects our health, but also our self-esteem and the way others perceive us. Medical experts emphasize that maintaining a routine in personal care is crucial for both physical health and mental well-being. I realized that by letting these habits slide, I was inadvertently sending a message of resignation, one that I no longer wanted to accept. 8. Overindulgence in comfort foods and sedentary lifestyles. With age, many of us seek comfort in familiar foods and a sedentary lifestyle, often as a way to cope with the challenges of aging. I, too, found solace in habits that, in hindsight, were counterproductive. Comfort eating, while momentarily gratifying, can lead to long-term health issues such as diabetes and heart disease. Studies have shown that seniors who engage in regular physical activity and maintain a balanced diet not only live longer, but enjoy a significantly higher quality of life. It took me a while to realize that the very habits I clung to for comfort were, in fact, undermining my well-being. 9. Ignoring mental health needs. For many years, I put my mental health on the back burner, assuming that depression or anxiety were just part of getting older. This neglect was dangerous. The stigma around mental health issues in older adults often leads to a dangerous silence that can have devastating consequences. Research in psychology has highlighted the increased risk of cognitive decline and depression in seniors who do not actively address their mental health. Recognizing this, I began to take steps toward regular mental health checkups and mindfulness practices, understanding that a sound mind is as important as a sound body. 10. Refusing to adapt to new social norms. Social norms are constantly evolving, and while it's natural to feel nostalgic for the past, a complete refusal to adapt can alienate us from our families and communities. I noticed that I would sometimes dismiss new social etiquettes and cultural shifts with a scoff, missing opportunities for connection. Studies in social behavior suggest that flexibility in adapting to new norms can enhance our social interactions and reduce feelings of isolation. Embracing change, rather than fighting it, has the power to rejuvenate our relationships and even open new avenues for engagement. 11. Holding on to resentment and past grievances. One of the most corrosive habits I discovered was the tendency to cling to past grievances. I found myself revisiting old conflicts, letting them fester into a quiet bitterness that poisoned my relationships. Whether it was a perceived slight from decades ago or ongoing family disputes, holding on to resentment prevented me from moving forward. Research in emotional well-being confirms that letting go of grudges is crucial for both mental and physical health. Forgiveness, as difficult as it may be, is an essential part of aging gracefully. I began to see that every moment spent in bitterness was a moment stolen from the chance to embrace a brighter, more connected future. 12. Denying the need for continuous learning. Lastly, one of the most subtle yet damaging habits was the refusal to engage in continuous learning. I recall times when I dismissed new ideas or hobbies as irrelevant, convinced that my best days of intellectual exploration were behind me. This mindset is more common than one might think among seniors, but it's one that can have a profound impact on cognitive health. Studies in neuroplasticity and lifelong learning reveal that mental stimulation, whether through reading, puzzles, or learning a new skill, can stave off cognitive decline and foster a sense of purpose. I realized that to truly age well, I needed to remain curious, open, and willing to challenge my preconceived notions about what it means to grow older. As I laid bare these 12 ugly truths, I felt a mix of discomfort and relief. There was no sugarcoating these behaviors. They were raw, real, and, in many ways, a mirror reflecting years of unresolved emotions and unaddressed needs. But acknowledging them was the first step toward change. I'm not sharing these details to cast judgment or to shame anyone, least of all myself. Instead, my hope is that by confronting these hidden habits, we can begin a conversation that leads to healing and growth. If you're still with me, I'd like to take a moment to ask, have you ever seen any of these behaviors in yourself or someone you love? Perhaps you've noticed the subtle withdrawal from social life or the way nostalgia sometimes turns into bitterness. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below with the number 2 if you relate to any of these experiences or share your story. Your insights not only validate my own journey, but can also help others feel less alone in their struggles. Reflecting on these behaviors has been a humbling experience. I've come to understand that aging is not merely a collection of wrinkles and gray hairs. It's a complex, multifaceted process that affects our minds, bodies, and hearts. The ugly things we sometimes do are not signs of moral failure. They are signals of deep, often unspoken challenges. In many cases, these behaviors are coping mechanisms born from a lifetime of experiences, a mix of joy and sorrow, triumph and regret. During this period of self-examination, I reached out to experts, read countless articles, and even attended seminars on aging. One particular study from the American Journal of Geriatric Psychiatry resonated with me. It noted that acknowledging and addressing negative behaviors can significantly improve mental health outcomes in seniors. Armed with this knowledge, I realized that change is within our grasp if we are willing to face our imperfections head-on. I began to experiment with small changes in my daily routine. I set reminders to call a friend, forced myself to attend community events even when I didn't feel like it, and started journaling my emotions every night. These simple actions were steps toward breaking free from this cycle of negativity. They reminded me that while the habits we form over decades can be hard to shake, they are not immutable. With determination and the right support, we can rewrite our narratives. Every time I made progress, however small, I felt a renewed sense of hope. I learned that it's not about erasing the past or pretending that our struggles never existed. It's about embracing the totality of who we are, the good, the bad, and everything in between, and using that awareness to drive positive change. As we continue this journey together, I encourage you to think about your own life. Reflect on the habits you might have overlooked or dismissed as just part of getting older. What small steps could you take to challenge these behaviors? Whether it's reaching out to a friend, trying a new activity, or simply being kinder to yourself, every action counts. Let's use this space as a forum for honest dialogue and mutual support. Your comments and stories are not just words, they are lifelines for those who might be struggling silently. In sharing these 12 ugly truths, I am not offering a cure-all solution, but rather a call to awareness. Recognizing our imperfections is the first step to transforming them. I invite you to join me in this process of self-improvement. Let's commit to a future where aging is celebrated for its richness and complexity, where we can laugh at our past mistakes and learn from them, and where we finally have the courage to shed the habits that hold us back from living fully. Before I wrap up this section, I want to reiterate, this is a conversation, not a monologue. I truly want to hear from you. What ugly habits have you noticed in your own life, and how have you begun to address them? Share your insights, your struggles, and even your triumphs in the comments below. If you've ever felt the sting of isolation, the weight of outdated pride, or the frustration of refusing help, know that you're not alone. Together, we can transform these challenges into stepping stones toward a healthier, happier future. As I reflect on these revelations, I feel a stirring of determination, a desire to transform not just my behaviors, but my entire outlook on aging. I'm beginning to see that every flaw is an opportunity for growth, every ugly habit a lesson waiting to be learned. It's a daunting process, but it's one that I am now ready to face head-on with honesty, humility, and a commitment to change. So, if you're still with me, I invite you to take this journey alongside me. Comment below with your thoughts, share a story if you feel moved, or simply let me know that you're here. Your voice matters. Let's support one another as we navigate the complexities of aging together, turning these ugly truths into catalysts for profound personal transformation. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, I found myself standing at a crossroads where everything I had once taken for granted was being reshaped. The ugly habits I'd identified, those 12 hidden behaviors, had begun to show their true colors, not as irreversible marks of decay, but as signals for change. It was during one crisp winter morning, while I was on a long walk through a park dusted with fresh snow, that I felt the first genuine stirrings of transformation. The cold air, once a reminder of life's slowing pace, now seemed to cleanse my thoughts, clearing away the residue of years spent in denial and self-criticism. I started to see that every flawed behavior had a story behind it, a tale of pain, pride, and sometimes fear. In the quiet moments of reflection, I began to understand that my stubborn isolation wasn't just a refusal to change, it was a shield against vulnerability. The bitter nostalgia and incessant comparisons weren't meant to belittle the present, but were echoes of a longing for a past that no longer existed. And the aversion to modern technology, as well as the denial of my physical limitations, were manifestations of a deep-seated need to protect my sense of identity. Recognizing this was the first, crucial step toward healing. I recall one particularly transformative afternoon when I gathered with a small group of friends at a local community center, a place that had once felt foreign and intimidating. In the warm, inviting glow of a communal kitchen, we shared not only our stories, but our fears and hopes as well. There was something profoundly liberating about admitting, "I'm struggling," in a room filled with those who understood the silent battles of aging. The conversation flowed naturally, from reminiscing about better days to laughing over the absurdities of our stubborn habits. For the first time in years, I felt a collective heartbeat of resilience and acceptance, reminding me that I was not alone. One friend, Linda, who had battled a similar reluctance to ask for help, told me how embracing vulnerability allowed her to reconnect with her family. Her simple act of reaching out transformed not only her relationships, but also her self-image. Inspired by her courage, I began to make changes that were as small as they were significant. I learned to ask for help without feeling like I was surrendering my independence, to open up about my struggles with modern technology rather than hide them, and to embrace my limitations as part of a larger, ever-evolving self. I immersed myself in new experiences, joining a local tech workshop that demystified smartphones and social media, a realm I had long dismissed as irrelevant. With each lesson, I discovered not just practical skills, but also a renewed sense of connection with the world around me. I was able to video call my grandchildren, share photos, and even learn about their interests. In doing so, I not only bridged a gap that I hadn't known existed, but also rebuilt a sense of belonging that had been eroded by years of isolation. The transformation was subtle yet profound, shifting my perspective from one of resistance to one of eager acceptance. My journey toward recovery wasn't solely about technology or social engagement, it was also about healing the deep emotional wounds that had accumulated over decades. I started to attend a weekly mindfulness group at the community center where we practiced meditation and shared our inner battles. During one session, as I sat cross-legged on the cool floor, I closed my eyes and allowed the stream of negative thoughts to flow, acknowledging each one without judgment. I recognized the self-criticism, the lingering bitterness, and the long-held resentments as old companions I no longer wished to walk with. With every mindful breath, I began to release the weight of the past, making space for forgiveness and acceptance. In these moments of deep introspection, I discovered that the ugly behaviors we sometimes exhibit are often coping mechanisms, ways our minds try to protect us from further hurt. But these very mechanisms, if left unchecked, can lead us down a dark path of isolation and despair. Realizing this, I made a conscious choice to transform my flaws into stepping stones toward a better version of myself. I sought professional guidance, attended therapy sessions tailored for seniors, and started reading about neuroplasticity and cognitive resilience. The more I learned, the more I realized that our brains, much like our bodies, can be retrained. Old habits can be unlearned, and new, healthier patterns can take root. One of the most impactful changes was how I began to approach my personal grooming and self-care. I made it a point to maintain a regular routine, taking showers, dressing neatly, and even experimenting with a new hairstyle. These might seem like trivial acts, but they had a monumental effect on my self-esteem. Each morning became a ritual of self-respect, a reaffirmation that I was worthy of care and kindness. I started noticing how a simple change in appearance could brighten my mood and influence how others interacted with me. Compliments from friends and even strangers began to come more naturally, reinforcing the idea that nurturing oneself can have a ripple effect on the entire social fabric around us. As my personal transformation unfolded, I also noticed a shift in my relationships. Family gatherings, which had once been marred by unspoken tensions and subtle resentments, evolved into warm, heartfelt interactions. My children, who had long been frustrated by my self-imposed isolation and reluctance to adapt, started to see a change. They began engaging with me more openly, asking about my day, and sharing their own struggles without fear of judgment. It was as if a long-forgotten bridge was being rebuilt, one plank at a time, until we were once again united by understanding and mutual respect. The climax of my journey came on an ordinary day that turned extraordinary, a day when I realized that the ugly habits of my past no longer define me. I had reached a moment of clarity while watching the sunset from my back porch. The sky was a canvas of fiery oranges and soft purples, a vivid reminder that every day ends in beauty, regardless of the trials it brings. In that quiet moment, I felt an overwhelming surge of gratitude for the journey I had undertaken, the struggles, the revelations, and the small victories that had led me to this point of rebirth. I no longer saw my past behaviors as irreversible defects, but as opportunities to learn and grow. Each flaw was a lesson, each mistake a stepping stone toward a more mindful and compassionate self. At that moment, I made a vow to myself. I would continue to embrace change, to nurture the relationships that mattered, and to never shy away from acknowledging my imperfections. I realized that aging is not a descent into ugliness, but a complex, ever-evolving tapestry of experiences. The ugly behaviors I had once hidden away were now part of my story, a story that, with time, could be transformed into one of wisdom, resilience, and renewal. I began sharing my journey more openly, not as a cautionary tale, but as an invitation to others. I reached out to seniors in my community, organizing small discussion groups where we could talk honestly about the challenges of aging. We exchanged stories, supported each other through setbacks, and celebrated our progress, no matter how small. These gatherings became a beacon of hope, a safe space where the harsh judgments of society were replaced by empathy and mutual respect. I also started a blog where I chronicled my transformation, weaving together personal anecdotes with insights from research and expert advice. The blog became a platform for conversation, a place where readers could comment, share their own experiences, and even suggest ways to overcome their own challenges. If you're watching this right now, I urge you to take a moment and reflect on your own journey. What ugly habits have you noticed in your life, and how have they held you back? More importantly, what small changes can you make today to reclaim your sense of self-worth? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's create a community where we learn from one another, where our vulnerabilities are met with compassion rather than judgment. My transformation wasn't instantaneous, it was the result of countless small steps taken each day. I still have moments of doubt, days when old habits whisper in my ear, tempting me to retreat into the comfort of familiar patterns. But now, armed with self-awareness and the support of those who care, I have learned to recognize these moments for what they are, fleeting shadows that do not define the entirety of who I am. I celebrate my progress, however incremental, and I understand that every day is a new opportunity to grow. As I look back on the person I once was, the isolated, resentful, and self-critical senior, I now see a reflection of both struggle and hope. The journey to transform these ugly habits into a life filled with grace was neither easy nor straightforward, but it was profoundly rewarding. I discovered that the path to renewal lies not in denying our past, but in embracing it fully, using every experience as a stepping stone toward a brighter future. Aging, I learned, is not about the decline of vitality, but about the evolution of character, a journey that, when navigated with honesty and courage, can lead to the most beautiful chapters of our lives. So, as we conclude this journey together, I want to leave you with one final thought. Every flaw, every ugly habit is an invitation to change. It's a call to look within, to acknowledge our imperfections, and to use them as fuel for growth. No matter how deep the scars or how long the habits have been ingrained, the power to transform lies within us all. Let's continue this conversation. Share your stories, your struggles, and your triumphs in the comments below. Your voice is important, and together, we can redefine what it means to age with dignity, resilience, and hope. As I stepped into what felt like a brand new chapter of my life, I began to realize that the journey of transformation was far from over. The painful admission of my past ugly habits, the struggle to confront them head-on, and the gradual, often painful process of change had brought me to a place of clarity and renewal. Yet, even as I embraced this new dawn, I knew that the road ahead would require vigilance, empathy, and a willingness to adapt continually. In this final part of my journey, I share how I learned to integrate all the lessons of my past into a future full of hope, connection, and purpose, and how every one of us, regardless of age, can redefine what it means to truly live. I remember the crisp morning when I first recognized that change was not a destination but a lifelong commitment. I woke up feeling lighter than I had in years. The persistent heaviness that once cloaked my mind had begun to lift, replaced by an optimism that even the winter chill couldn't freeze. It was on that day I decided to actively seek out opportunities that would nurture both my body and soul. I signed up for a community art class, something I had always wanted to do but never dared to try. The simple act of putting brush to canvas opened a world where creativity and expression became my allies. In that moment, I felt an exhilarating mix of vulnerability and empowerment, a potent reminder that it is never too late to reinvent oneself. The art class was more than a creative outlet. It became a sanctuary where age and past mistakes melted away into the vibrant colors on the canvas. I was surrounded by people of all ages, each sharing their stories and insecurities through their artwork. We bonded over shared experiences and the unspoken understanding that life, no matter how many years it has seen, always offers new chances for growth. The joy of creation replaced the self-imposed isolation that had once dominated my days. I began to see that the ugly habits I had struggled with were not marks of irreversible decay, but rather signals urging me to explore new avenues for connection and self-expression. Alongside the creative renaissance, I embraced technology as a bridge to a more interconnected life. I enrolled in an online course focused on digital storytelling, a venture that was both intimidating and exhilarating. The first time I logged into a virtual classroom, I felt a pang of anxiety, a fear of being left behind. But as weeks turned into months, that anxiety transformed into genuine curiosity. I learned how to share my experiences through blogs and videos, reaching out to a broader community of seniors who, like me, were on the path of self-discovery. This digital journey not only improved my technological skills, but also connected me to people from different walks of life, proving that the wisdom accumulated over decades can find fresh relevance in the digital age. My renewed approach to life also touched my relationships in profound ways. Family dinners, which once felt strained by years of unspoken tensions and grudges, evolved into sessions of heartfelt conversations. My children and grandchildren began to see me not as a relic of the past, but as a vibrant individual with ideas, emotions, and a contagious zest for life. There was one evening that stands out: a quiet dinner at home, with soft music playing in the background. My granddaughter, with tears glistening in her eyes, said, "Grandpa, I never knew you had so many stories to tell. It's like you're a whole new person." That moment, simple as it was, encapsulated the profound shift in our family dynamic. The walls of isolation had crumbled, replaced by bridges of understanding and compassion. In parallel, I found solace and strength in regular mindfulness and meditation practices. Each day, I dedicated a few moments to sit in silence, focusing on my breath, allowing my thoughts to come and go without judgment. These sessions, though brief, became powerful anchors in my otherwise turbulent life. They reminded me that healing is an inside job, that our inner world, when nurtured with patience and compassion, has the power to reshape our entire reality. Research in neuroplasticity has shown that mindfulness practices can create new neural pathways, helping us break free from entrenched patterns of negativity. I experienced this transformation firsthand as I learned to observe my thoughts without being consumed by them, gradually reclaiming control over my emotional landscape. Yet, perhaps the most profound change came from the decision to help others walk their own paths to transformation. I began volunteering at a local senior center, offering not only my time, but also sharing the hard-earned lessons of my journey. I started a small support group where we would gather to discuss the challenges of aging openly, without judgment, without shame. These meetings became a space of mutual support and empowerment. In one memorable session, a woman tearfully admitted, "I've been so afraid of being a burden that I stopped asking for help." Her confession struck a deep chord with everyone present. It was a moment of raw vulnerability that reminded us all that true strength lies in the courage to be honest about our struggles. Through these interactions, I discovered that the transformation of our lives is a communal journey. Every shared story, every expression of empathy, became a building block for a stronger, more connected community. I began documenting these sessions in a blog series, intertwining personal anecdotes with insights from psychological studies and gerontological research. I shared how addressing negative behaviors, like withdrawal or stubbornness, could lead to improved mental health, better relationships, and a more fulfilling life. My words resonated with readers far and wide, sparking conversations and inspiring many to re-examine their own lives. As I reflect on my journey from confronting my ugly habits to embracing a future full of possibility, I realize that aging is a paradox, a process that brings both inevitable challenges and extraordinary opportunities for growth. Each wrinkle and gray hair carries a story. Each scar is a testament to battles fought and lessons learned. The secret I discovered is not to hide these imperfections, but to honor them, transforming them into symbols of resilience and wisdom. I am now a firm believer that our later years can be our most productive, transformative, and beautiful period of life. With every new dawn, I wake up ready to explore, to learn, and to connect. I have learned that even the most stubborn habits can be changed, that the isolation we sometimes seek is only temporary, and that technology and modernity are not foes, but allies in our quest for a better life. If you are watching this, I invite you to join me on this journey of continuous transformation. Reflect on your own life. What habits might be holding you back? What small changes can you implement today to reclaim your sense of purpose? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Whether you're a senior or someone who cares about the seniors in your life, your voice is invaluable. Let's build a community of mutual support where every story matters and every experience is a lesson waiting to be shared. In closing, I want to leave you with this thought. The beauty of aging is not measured by the absence of flaws, but by our capacity to grow despite them. Every step you take towards self-improvement is a victory, no matter how small. Embrace your imperfections, cherish your experiences, and know that every day offers a fresh start. I am living proof that it's never too late to rewrite your story, to turn your struggles into strengths, and to create a legacy defined by wisdom, compassion, and resilience. Thank you for accompanying me on this journey of self-discovery and renewal. Remember, you hold the power to transform your life at any age. Let's continue to inspire and support one another, proving that our later years can be a time of boundless growth, connection, and joy. Please share your stories, comment below, and let's forge a path toward a future where aging is celebrated as the most vibrant chapter of our lives.